Hello, everybody. I'm Frank Stanisci of Candid Frank Live. Welcome to the Spanglish World Network on Zingo TV, channel 250. Please remember to download the Zingo TV app at the respective app stores for iOS and Android devices. While you download, make sure you rate and leave a comment. Both apps are absolutely free. Zingo TV is available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire, Fire TV sticks, Roku sticks, and also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. Now on Candid Frank Live, joining me as usual is Aaron William Freeland. Hello, Aaron. How you doing?
Doing good. How are you, Frank?
Good. Just so excited because I don't know, just excited. We're going to talk. Well, you know what? We'll just talk about it to this degree. We'll start with March Madness. The reason it's called March Madness, we can discuss at a later date. For now, what we can talk about are the scores are crazy, which is, I guess, the same thing, isn't it?
Sounds about right. Yeah. A lot of it has been not what you would have expected. Some of it has been perfectly in line, but however you've put down bets so far this year, 9 times out of 10, your bracket's probably already busted.
The Kentucky bucket.
Oh, I got to tell you, that was nobody was expecting that one. That was St. Peter's 15th seed taking the game 85-79 over number 2 Kentucky. That was a bit of an upset. I just don't know what to say here, man. I mean, Northern Mexico State beat Connecticut. That's a 12 seed taking a 5 seed. I mean, Texas State beat Montana.
Every time there's a 12 that takes a 5. This was this one.
It's funny how that seems to work, right?
It's unbelievable. It truly is. What I'll say about this is there are a lot of people crying out there, and Eduardo was crying really bad because when Kentucky lost, the odds of them losing were 1,500 to 1. That means that if you put down $100 on the Saintly team, you made $1.5 million.
Which is nuts.
Is that crazy or what?
And then you got to pay
we're
taxes
talking a
on
preliminary game, right? We're not talking, my goodness, that's just crazy. But anyway, listen, to you folks whose brackets got busted, I'm sorry. To those of you that bet on the right team, can you send me a couple of notes about who to bet on, please? Because I trust you now.
I'm glad I don't bet on this sort of thing, Frank. It would drive me nuts. It would drive me to drink.
I can't bet. I hate losing. Okay, let's get back to business here. The Randy Tour is on. We'll see where it lands next. And what news we'll get. About a month and a half ago, David and I talked, and I think you might have been involved in that conversation too. We were talking about F1 and the CFL to promote the game, doing something with F1. Well, the commissioner is talking about that last week.
Oh, excellent.
Word for word. Edmonton Elks, veteran Edmonton Elks player retires, Darius Bowman, again.
Yeah, this is the second time he's done it. I believe the first time he did it was late 2019, October 17th, but he re-signed with the Elks in January of this year, just apparently so he could retire. Now, Bowman's played 11 CFL seasons with Saskatchewan, Winnipeg, Edmonton, and Montreal, and he won a Grey Cup with the Elks in 2015 under Chris Jones, who returned this season as the coach and GM. So a little bit of a reunion there, and a nice way to go out. You know, you sign a brief one with the team that you want to retire at, so he gets to wear that hat going into the Hall of Fame. And I'm reasonably certain he'll get there. He's had a remarkable enough season.
The Leafs blew over the Hurricanes, including their ex-goaltender.
This is one of those sweet little revenge things. I know that Freddie Anderson has been playing absolutely out of his mind for the Carolina Hurricanes this year. So to have them come into town and to have the Leafs beat them handily is a wonderful thing to have happen. And you know what? Sjögren played a really, really good game as well. He made 35 saves on 37 shots. It's his second start of the season, second win. That caps off his beautiful 4-0 shutout over the Dallas Stars from Tuesday night. And again, Frank, this raises the question with how the Maple Leafs played without Austin Matthews in the lineup. How easy is it going to be for him to get back into the lineup? Slowly but surely, but I'm not sure where.
Start him on the bench. You wanted to start him on the 4th. I'm saying we start him on the bench. What do
I
you
think for him to get his feet back and to get his hands back after a 2-game absence like that, it can be difficult. But if you start him on the 4th line and let him eat, I think, you'll have some good results.
People are throwing stuff at their monitors right now because they actually buy that commentary. No, that's not true. But what is true, here we go again. They're building up Shalgren. You get the group of Leaf fans that can't wait to say good news and make predictions of how great their players are, where they become unrealistically complimentary of a goaltender who's just played his second game.
Yeah, it's one of those, oh, look, we have a new starter. We don't have to worry about Jack and his contract anymore. We'll just sign this 28-year-old or 25-year-old AHL goalie, and he'll be our savior. And then,
because he's won 2 games in a row.
Oh,
and he got a shutout, too. He's the best goalie to ever come up to the Leafs. And then what happens is, I'll put it this way with simple numbers. 33%, 1/3 of Leaf fans are, we got our new goaltender. This guy's the greatest thing since sliced bread. Then after he loses, a game or two, it'll be the other third. One of the other thirds will take over. It'll be talking about this goalie sucks. He's terrible. Can't stop a beach ball. Meanwhile, there's the ones in the middle that are going, you guys need to stop getting so excited one way or the other. Can you just not let the guy play goal? Because that's part of the problem. Nothing to add?
No, honestly, you've got the breakdown pretty much set there, Frank.
I'm just attributing numbers to it, but essentially that's what you're talking about. And it's not every fan base either. The problem with Toronto is there's too many of them.
Well, with every fan group, you get the usual gang of idiots, as I call it, and they're the ones that are quick to anoint and quick to tear down.
So. Please just enjoy the games. He won 2 games. He got a shutout in the first one. The last one he had a little bit of luck too. A little bit. Like the puck travels past him to the stick of the Carolina Hurricane player that all they had to do was tap it into the open net. Couldn't find the puck with his stick.
No.
So folks, that's what it's about. There's a bit of luck and there's a lot of skill involved. And you just too much. Like, it's just too much. He played well. He's a good goaltender that teams, Aaron, honestly haven't figured out yet. There's that part too. It's like a pitcher going around the 5th, 6th inning.
It's the shiny new toy syndrome too, because teams haven't figured out how to shoot on him yet. So
and they will. And then the trick's going to be, does he have a counter move? And that's what being a pro is all about. It's not about figuring it out. It's about you keep figuring it out, because pros figure out ways to undo what you're capable of doing. And it's your ability to be reflexive, not only in the net, in your head as well, right? To bounce back. So we'll see. And I haven't lost faith in Campbell. I haven't even lost faith in Mrazek either. I just figure you take him out until he figures out how to play. This is something that happened at the beginning of the year. Mrazek was mostly injured, but he did have a tough time at the beginning of the year. He has never really fit in here in Toronto. And some people are suggesting that he just doesn't have the mental makeup. Doesn't mean there's something wrong with him. It just means he's not very good with all this pressure. He came from a Carolina team where the only people that care about that team are in the rink.
This is very true. And you put him in a high pressure cooker environment like Toronto, where everybody's staring at everything you do. Oh, he ate his Wheaties in 4 bites this morning instead of 3. What's wrong? Sort of
Absolutely.
thing. And it's hard for anybody to adapt. I mean, it's no wonder guys like Dave Riddick had issues here as well. Dave was normally a really quiet kind of guy, but all of a sudden he's thrust into an absolute pressure cooker. People are looking for sound bites, and it doesn't end well.
Aaron, this is why I was so against the Leafs trading Anderson. He had the mental makeup to deal with the pressure. But, and they're still trying to put words in his mouth. Well, he's glad to be out. Give me a break. He doesn't talk that way. That's not the way Anderson talks.
No.
Let's go to the Montreal Canadiens. GM Kent Hughes not looking to make a fire sale just because he got rid of Sherratt.
I'm almost wondering if Florida didn't do something like this just to sort of mess with the Leafs, just by setting the bar, as it were, by trading Sherratt to Florida on Wednesday night for a 2023 first round, a 2022 fourth round pick, and a prospect. I'm wondering if there wasn't a deliberate move on their part to try to set the market,
Well, if you're a team that plays hockey and there is a defenseman who has a reputation for playing good playoff hockey, you make a move for him. And if it just so happens that if you run into the Leafs, they're going to go he was the beginning of the end of that series. And by beginning, I mean, he's the guy who originally hit, right? He had the original hit on the captain.
Which eventually led to,
the knee was was an aftershock, after effect. Anyway, Klingberg overtime winner lifts Stars past the Canadiens 4-3.
Now, this is one of the players that the Leafs were supposedly rumored to be in on in a trade.
Absolutely.
So, anything like this raises his value. But it was a late overtime winner. It wasn't necessarily early in it. I know that Caulfield, Suzuki, and Caulfield and Suzuki scored for Montreal, and Radek Faska and Jamie Benn also had goals for Dallas. Now, they did actually trade goals relatively early in the game. But as it turns out, Dallas had just a little bit more left in the tank at the end of the game, and that's what did it for them.
Good for them. Victory well served. The Ottawa Senators signed Philippe Daou to an entry-level contract.
So this is one of their draft picks from 2020. He was taken in the 6th round, 158th overall. He's currently playing with the St. John Sea Dogs of the Q, where he's got 22 points in 17 games. That's 11 goals and 11 assists. He also spent some of his time so far this season with the AHL's Belleville Senators, collecting 5 assists in 15 games. So they've seen what he can do in the A. They have a good example of what he can do in the Q, and from there they're going to continue to try to develop him. So prior to this, I know that Daou had played a couple of seasons with the Moncton Wildcats, getting 57 points in 79 games. This is actually the 6th player from the 2020 draft class that the team has actually signed. So good signs for them. They've got a better farm system developing now. They seem to be better able to utilize and better manage the players that they got in Belleville and Q.
Edmonton exacted revenge on behalf of the Maple Leafs on the Sabres, 6-1.
This is their 4th victory in a row now. Things are looking up for the Edmonton Oilers. And again, it's part of the coach bounce. But you got Draisaitl, Nurse, and Shore scoring. Not to mention Yamamoto, Connor McDavid, and Tyson Barrie, ex-Maple Leaf great Tyson Barrie. So they've all chipped in. I'm glad to see that they're getting more evenly distributed scoring at this point. It's not just the Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl show. It's getting a little more spread around. So,
Vancouver Canucks playing real well, maybe complicating things for the GM and his maybe wanting to get some decent future picks in there somehow.
This is a problem for a lot of teams when they do decide eventually that they're going to try to pull the plug, as it were, on the season and try to go for the best possible drafting position that they can find. Occasionally, players will step up their games to the detriment. I remember one of the years the Leafs were trying to go for a higher draft pick, and Colin Greening all of a sudden came out like he was on fire, and that caused some consternation for the Leafs. But JT Miller has been playing well. The corners being turned by Brock Besser. Connor Garland is drawing a significant amount of interest, but
another guy that was on the trading block.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly. And Pettersson's finally rounding into form as well. Not to mention Luke Shen. So
another guy that's on the trading block.
Yeah.
So the Canucks president Rutherford tests positive for COVID-19, and I thought we were past that.
Well, it is what it is. He's gone into NHL's protocols and is working from home. Most of the the Canucks roster tested positive in late December and early January. It'd be interesting to see how Rutherford comes out of it here. He only came to Pittsburgh in December after spending more than 7 years with the Penguins. So we'll have to see what happens here. I mean, the Canucks didn't have a good start, but under Rutherford's hand, they've managed to turn it around a little bit. So they're sitting at 30-24-7 right now, and are hosting the Red Wings shortly. So we'll have to see how that works out for them.
The Red Wings were averaging around 5 to 6 goals a game over the last dozen. Nedeljkovic posts a 43 save shutout, so he did miracles, actually. The only reason Detroit didn't have 5 goals against is because of him. They beat Vancouver 1-0.
Yeah, this was actually Nedeljkovic's second shutout of the season and 5th of his career. Pius Suter was the only one who had a goal midway through the second period, with help from Vladislav Nemesnikov. So Demko stopped 34 of 35 shots. So he had a fantastic game as well. But unfortunately, Detroit came out on top in this one. Now, Vancouver also went 0 for 3 with the man advantage on Thursday, and Detroit was scoreless in its only power play.
Let's go to baseball. And apparently robo-umps in the minors.
Mm-hmm. This is something that they're going to be trying to roll out because baseball players are better than ever. Baseball games are getting longer, slower, and less athletic, I guess is what it is. They're trying to introduce a pitch clock, a ban on the defensive shift, and they're going to tweak and expand the use of robo-umps for a challenge system, which is going to be tested in the lower leagues for the first time. It's just a decision to try to do that. They're also going to try to limit the number of pickoffs that a pitcher can throw. They're trying to, in Double-A, for example, last year they had 15 seconds with no one on base and 17 seconds to throw a pitch. This season, you're going to have 14 seconds with the bases empty and 19 seconds with runners on base, and 14 seconds with the bases empty and 18 seconds with runners on base in the Double-A and Single-A levels.
All in an attempt to speed the game up.
Well, a 3.5-hour game, man, it takes a huge chunk out of your day. So
turn it into a 7-inning game.
I mean, you could, but then it's not baseball, is it? Because it's only 7. Speaking of which, that whole rule with the doubleheaders and only doing 7 innings.
It's gone.
Yeah, well,
it's gone. You're going to do all 9. A lot of people like that. So yeah, doubleheader,
I like the 7-inning doubleheader games. I personally preferred that, but that's just me.
I like how extra innings works as well during the regular season. Make something happen.
Yep.
The Toronto to New York COVID train, we'll call it, or anti-COVID train. If you want to get on that train, you can't have COVID. And if you have COVID, you won't be going from Toronto to New York or New York to Toronto.
No, and again, it's because of the rules that are currently in place that will affect the Mets and the Yankees and the Blue Jays. Now, I know that the Canadian government has announced that as of January 15th, groups that have previously been exempt under for certain vaccine rules will now fall under that umbrella again. With the Yankees playing 9 games in Toronto this year, and the Bo Sox playing 10 games north of the border, it's gonna be interesting for those players who are still holdouts when it comes to this sort of thing.
Last year was the trailer. With Mark Chapman's arrival, now it's time for the feature.
Yeah, baby. We're talking about a great teaser that was last year. And this season, with the addition of Chapman and with them closing in on potentially some other big ads, it's going to be great to see. Like, if you thought the baseball was already exciting, it's going to get even more exciting now.
So, with Kawhi Leonard in the stands, Siakam and the Raptors clipped the Clippers.
Yeah, they've finally actually hit 5 games in a row. Pascal Siakam had 31 points. Watched some of the game myself. It was pretty neat to see. They've been 5-1 on their road trip. Pascal Siakam has scored at least 20 points in a career high 8 consecutive games, and he's averaging about 28 points a game during that time. So it's interesting.
This team is, it's crazy, but the two Toronto teams, the Raptors and the Leafs, right now they're in about the same place, standings wise, right?
Mm-hmm.
But you got to admit, the way the Raptors have gotten there has been far more entertaining for their fans and a lot more satisfying.
Oh, most definitely. They've put together some fantastic runs. Do you remember a couple years back when we consistently played LeBron and people started referring to Toronto as LeBronto because he owned us?
Yes.
They've been
Not
calling
anymore.
They've been calling this Western road swing past Californication.
I got to tell you, he is such a, well, did you see what he did to Barnes when he threw the ball right at him? And there was no technical, no foul, nothing. What the heck?
Yeah, it's one of those things that, the NBA probably should have caught it, but exceptions are made
You'd
for
think
certain
that
individuals.
you'd think it wasn't the Raptors. You'd think it was the Leafs.
Almost. I mean, we're finding it harder and harder to get calls these days.
Is
So
it
that
because
could be
they're
part
from
of it.
Toronto that they get that kind of officiating? Is that what
I'm
it is?
wondering, man.
Is that what it is?
I'm
Because
thinking
we've
there's
seen
an
it in baseball
anti-Canada
too.
bias.
Remember last year, the pitches?
Oh.
Blue Jays were getting pissed. So they don't like Toronto. That might explain what's going on with FC.
It's entirely possible.
It's the officiating. Everybody hates Toronto.
I mean, we give them good reason to. Our fans are jerks. Let's be honest here, Frank. We're not the nicest when it comes to heckling referees or cheering for our teams, or even how we treat our own players. If we think that
I don't know it. I don't know if you can suggest that Toronto fans cheer for their players. They jeer for their players, maybe, but I guess it's how you pronounce it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, Toronto fans, clean up your act. Speaking of, Major League Soccer rosters come from 82 countries, and Canada supplies 46 players.
Which is pretty awesome when you think about it. I mean, the Canadian contingent is second only to the 350 players from the U.S., which, I mean, makes sense. The majority of the teams are American-based.
350. Well, the mathematics are there because they're 10 times the size of Canada. So 350, 10 times. Actually, we're ahead of the pace because 46 is less than one. Is more than 1/10.
Yep.
Is more than 1/10. So we're doing good. Probably just the same thing when it comes to hockey, basketball.
Sounds about right, actually.
Baseball.
But I mean, when you look at the contingents from Brazil and Colombia, not to mention France and England, we're a little bit ahead of the curve there. Brazil's got 34 players. So,
and then of course FC wants to raise the level of Italian players in the MLS on their own.
Oh, have you heard anything?
Well, there's a couple that were supposed to be coming here. We'll see what happens.
Oh, that's true.
Speaking of FC, their Jamaican defender has been traded to the Minnesota United.
Yeah, so Kamar Lawrence has been traded to Minnesota United. In exchange, we get the rights to Sean O'Hearn, a Georgetown defender, taken 38th overall in the 2021 Super Draft, and the conditional $50,000 in general allocation money in either 2022 or 2023 if certain performance metrics by Kamar Lawrence are met. So we're picking up actually a relatively valuable asset in O'Hearn, who can play fullback and center back. He's also played with TFC forward Ifunayachi Achara at Georgetown. Both were part of that Hoya squad that won the NCAA Division I title. So there's a certain amount of pedigree that comes along with it.
Manitoba, let's go to some news. Manitoba Premier says timing of her remark on her son's hockey game was misplaced.
Yeah.
Where was she supposed to put the remark?
Well, okay. So Heather Stephenson was answering a question. The opposition NDP leader, Wab Canoe, had been pushing for an inquest into the death of a lady by the name of Crystal Musso, a COVID-19 patient who had died last year while being transported out of the province for medical care. Now, Stephenson says, well, I'll answer the question, but I do want to, but she did take a moment to remark that her son's high school team had just won the provincial championship right before she answered the question. So a bit of unfortunate timing.
Proud mother.
Well, and Canoe was quick to burn her for it, saying, "Hey, I think it's great that you're talking about your son winning the championship, but unfortunately, Musso's children will not be able to have her at their side for important family events because of certain failures of the previous premier, Scott Moe." So Stephenson did apologize for it. She said it was ill-timed.
And Manitoba has done a lot of, they've sent a lot of their sick out of province.
Mm-hmm.
They've done a lot of that, and it deserves questioning. $19 million announced for affordable, accessible housing in Windsor, Essex, Caldwell First Nation.
Yeah, this is a big thing. The federal government has actually announced $19.2 million for dozens of affordable homes in Windsor, Essex, and Caldwell. So this was announced on Thursday and is coming through the Rapid Housing Initiative, which is going to see 61 new affordable housing units constructed in the next coming months. A lot of people are concerned about affordable and accessible housing, says Windsor Ward 2 Councillor Fabio Constante. It's a very big issue in our city. It's a no-brainer to sort of support that. There's going to be 8 units in Leamington, 15 units in Crawford Street in Windsor, 12 units at Bloomfield Road in Windsor, and another 26 new housing units for members of the Caldwell First Nation. So it's important that they're taking this step to help individuals. So perfect.
Ontario NDP removes longtime member from caucus, bars him from running an election.
So this is one of those, the past comes back to bite you. She's kicking the longtime representative for Hamilton East Stony Creek out of caucus and won't let him run. The party concluded its vetting process for Paul Miller, and based on the vetting that they did, has determined he wouldn't be permitted to run as an NDP candidate in this election.
Do we know why?
They haven't divulged any information about what they found.
Well, if you know, whisper it. Well, they're saying it's something from the last 4 years, but it's not police related. Okay, so then maybe we should wait for him to tell us.
Probably, yeah.
Because nobody else is going to, which is fine.
Exactly. Miller says that he's disputing the party's findings, but he's also consulting with a lawyer to see if they can convince the party somehow to let him run.
So I assume he's trying to get that without talking about what it is that they're concerned about.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? Well, we've all experienced and we all understand that sometimes the accusation can do a lot of damage, and undoing it, as Patrick Brown found out, can take a long time for an admission. It took, I think it's about 4 years, isn't it? That from the time that the Star article came out and then they apologized. So,
Well, this is actually something that I think that goes back to 2018.
Yeah, so it's another thing that the story goes back. The other story, I'm trying to remember, it wasn't that old. The story wasn't that old. The Patrick Brown thing was something that happened.
2019, when it was the run-up to the Ontario provincial election where Ford took power,
the actual event happened not long before. It wasn't old news. Like this one here, you're saying this one here, in this case, the politician that now is being told he can't run as an NDP candidate.
Mm-hmm.
The situation that goes back to 2018, or did I just jump to a conclusion?
No, that is what I said.
Okay.
There was an article in the the Hamilton Spectator about it as well. So
if the math works the same, 3 years to hear about it, 4 years to work it out, 7 years in total to deal with an issue that may or may not, should be dealt with. That's my point. That's my point. A lot of emotional damage can happen to a lot of people, not only those that are the victims. Well, the victims are different nowadays. Now you can turn somebody into a victim by accusing them of having victims. So we found that out with Brown.
Mm-hmm.
A Halifax mayor wants park being used by, he wants it returned to being used by the community.
Yeah, Meagher Park, which is called the People's Park by some, Mike Savage, the Halifax mayor, wants it returned to the people. It's currently being used as a tent site for homeless people, and it has been since August. So Savage says the city is currently working with the provincial government to create housing options for people living in the park. This also dovetails nicely with some of the information about some of the new proposed container and tiny homes that Halifax and Dartmouth are looking to put into place. So the city already made a major investment setting up 26 modular housing units in Dartmouth, with another 38 to come in Halifax. And we've mentioned this before on the show. So it's nice to see that they've got a location for the people living rough in the park to try to move into. Now the units were supposed to be ready by the end of January, but unfortunately, it doesn't look like they'll be getting this park back until about May, which is the new date for when those housing units are supposed to be completed.
Okay, let's go over to the Ukraine. U.S. soldiers are alive despite what Russia fake news report says. It's all about Americans being in Ukraine and that, right?
Yeah, 3 current and former members of the Tennessee National Guard were falsely identified in a Russian media report as mercenaries who were killed in Ukraine are in fact alive and well, the Tennessee National Guard has said. Now, President Biden ordered the withdrawal of U.S. troops from Ukraine prior to Russia's invasion of the country. But the report published in Pravda identified the Americans by name and gave military ranks for each, citing information from pro-Russian militia in Ukraine's Donetsk region, which is where the first incursion by Russia was made.
We've entered into a time, and if you haven't noticed, folks, and if you haven't noticed because you buy in, we've arrived at a time and a place where dishonesty has legs, and people lack the ability to fight dishonesty. We see and hear a lot of things that travel through the internet. And worse than that, we have, as we've witnessed, Tucker Carlson, wonderful reporter, man with great opinions, siding with the Russians, then start to backpedal, then continue to side with the Russians. And he regurgitates information that's not true. And people within our world, and I count America as part of Canada's world, because we have the same kind of people here who think, and this is, Aaron, the saddest part about stuff like this. These soldiers, the whole point here is they're saying we're fighting the Americans. That's what Russia's trying to say. That not only are they saying that they're fighting American weapons, which is what he said today. He had a big Trumpian get together. I don't know if you know, Putin had a big Trumpian get together today. If you look, you'll see in a stadium, right? With all the flags and the same pomp and circumstance.
Mm-hmm.
And then he's telling stories of things that many of us believe aren't true. Now, I don't know how to say this other than this, is that the thing that saddens me more than anything, and I don't want to see it happen here in Canada, is I don't want to see people, like if you and I have a fight, you and I disagree with each other. I would like it to be an argument you and I have based on facts, number one. Number two, that we have it between us and not bring in a third party to say, well, those people over there that neither of us like, they agree with me. That's the part I can't understand. Because anybody in America who supports Russia in any way doesn't understand the basic principle of democracy. And it's that democracy that you lose because you're siding with somebody who doesn't want democracy.
I always find it interesting that people say, how do Russians not know what's going on in their own country? And I think to myself, if you're American, you're living in a country where 40% of the people think that their guy won, even though he very clearly lost. So it can happen anywhere. I just
agreed. And the difference is that there's nobody to dispute that, right? Nobody's allowed to argue the point. If America was like Russia, there would be no disputing the election. I don't know how they can't figure that out. I don't understand how they don't see that the fact that they have the right to complain about the government and even accuse the government of cheating, of being crooked, and they can't put two and two together and say, well, what do they do in Russia when people say stuff like we say? How come we never hear about people there complaining about it? Because you're not allowed to. And if you do, you end up in jail. I'll tell you, I just, it boggles one's mind. And then those same people who talk about free rights for Americans are the same people that are saying, yeah, Russia's right.
I don't understand how
I
you can be a
don't get
patriot
it.
and then say you want to be Russian.
I don't get it. I don't get it. I really don't. And I'm sure there's logic to it. I just don't get it. Okay, Ron Jeremy, former porno
Adult film
guy.
star.
Yeah. So he's not all there. Is that what his lawyer's suggesting?
Well, it has now shifted after the initial charges were brought and so many different people stepped forward. Charges were initially brought back in 2020, so it's taken a while to get a lot of the information and a lot of the statements and everything like that. Now, he's been indicted on more than 30 criminal counts made based on allegations made by 21 different women. He faces a dozen counts of forcible rape, 7 counts of forcible oral copulation, 6 counts of battery by restraint. But now they're trying to shift it to saying, well, he's not mentally all there, therefore we can't prosecute him.
That doesn't
6
mean he
weeks
can't
before the
be
start of a
punished.
trial.
That doesn't
No,
mean he can't be punished, right?
no, but I think his defense is trying to move towards a not criminal due to reason of mental defect or disease.
Was he mentally defective at the time that he did what he did?
That is the question that they're looking to try to
I think we
answer.
both understand what I'm saying, and I
Yes,
know I understand what you're saying.
yeah,
Is that, all of a sudden he's crazy now, so whatever he did before doesn't matter? I don't think so.
yeah. See,
I
and
don't
they're
think
looking
so.
to schedule a mental health competency hearing for the month of April, so we'll have more
Whether
information
he
on that.
whether he ends up if he did this stuff, just if he did even a small portion of what he's accused of, for me, it's only a question of whether he spends time locked up in a Crowbar hotel or a rubber room. Either way, he gets locked up.
Yeah,
Right. So they can say whatever they want, but you can't ignore the pain and suffering that he caused, and you know the legitimate pain and suffering that he caused. I know sometimes I talk about guilt and innocence and accusations and stuff. The point is he's on trial right now, and hopefully beyond a shadow of a doubt, they'll find out one way or another, whether he was guilty or innocent to the fullest extent of the law. And then he pays the price according to the crime or crimes that he's committed. That's the way life should be, So I'm just not surprised, Aaron. Are you, that the legal system has this in it? Like they're supposed to. The defense lawyers are doing everything they can for their client. Understandable, totally understandable. But hopefully it doesn't disengage, the rights of the people who were harmed.
exactly. So I'm
Right?
hoping that there will be a resolution to this, and regardless of his current mental state, I hope that that justice is borne out, justice is done.
For me, his mental state only determines where he is, because for the sake of, if we're going to be compassionate or empathetic, we want him to, we want to respect his mental state.
Definitely.
But he doesn't get to use that mental state to be forgiven for what he's done. It just means that, okay, now we're going to consider what we're going to do to you based on where you're at. So, the point is, whether he's mentally incompetent or whatever, either way, if he's guilty, he needs to be separated from society until society can feel that they're safe to release him. And that's the whole point here, right?
Yep.
It's about stopping somebody from doing stuff. That's what that's what the criminal system's supposed to be about. Same reason why you might say somebody who committed a murder 40 years ago, 50 years ago, as a teenager, may have changed in the past 40 or 50 years. You can say that as well. I'm not here to say that, people should be defined as not being able to change. But there's a price that should be paid too. Forgiveness comes when you say you're sorry and when you mean it.
I think that's the part that a lot of people seem to forget, is that it actually has to be meant.
And I believe that 100%. Sorry.
Also, an apology is not, I'm sorry if you were offended. It's
No.
I'm sorry if I offended you.
I'm sorry is I'm sorry in my book.
Yeah. Wow.
Okay, Ontario science tables COVID-19 warning. Uh-oh. I smell trouble.
Yeah, it's something that keeps coming up over and over and over again, and nobody seems to listen. But the Ontario Science Table is warning that guess what, guys? New modeling data shows that the province is no longer seeing COVID-19 cases, hospitalizations, and ICU admissions decline. It's actually starting to go back up again. Given the relaxation of public health measures and the consequent increase in transmission, hospitals and ICU occupancy is expected to increase over the next few weeks, but less than in January 2022, and for a limited period of time if changes in behavior are only moderate. So we're looking at the BA2 becoming the dominant strain. And it's again, it's one of those, you got to run all the way through the finish line. You can't sort of let up when you're 99% of the way there. You've got to see it all the way through.
I think they call it Deltacron, right?
Or son of Omicron or something like
Omicron, no, Oma Delta, no. I think it's Deltacron. That's what they're calling it.
Okay.
Because it has the tenacity of Omicron, but it has the hurt of Delta.
Oh boy.
Yeah, that's the problem. COVID-19 travel rules change. Canada removes pre-arrival COVID-19 testing after that story.
Yeah. So, in the interest of getting businesses moving again and or reigniting our flagging tourism industry, pre-arrival testing for fully vaccinated travelers entering Canada will be removed effective April 1st, 2022. However, the federal government will continue with random PCR testing at airports, but you don't have to quarantine while you wait for your test results anymore, they're saying. Travelers must provide their proof of COVID-19 vaccination through the ArriveCAN app. So they're not completely doing away with vaccine passports. They're just saying you don't have to get tested before you get on the plane. So, yeah, there's that. And now the rules for cruise travelers when the season begins in early April, an antigen test is required for all passengers no more than 1 day before your scheduled departure. There is no longer going to be a requirement for individuals for being tested before getting off the cruise ship. Masks on planes are still going to be a thing. But as it currently stands, you should, and this is from Dr. Howard New, that's the Deputy Chief Public Health Officer of Canada, saying, you should still be wearing masks even if you don't have to.
But people will stop.
Well, of course they will. I mean, it's well, I don't have to wear this on my face anymore. I'm not going to wear it on my face anymore because I don't want to. You can't make me. So,
So how does China's soaring COVID numbers affect the rest of us on this big blue marble?
Well, if you've got individuals who are traveling there and their numbers have gone up and you don't have to test once before you hop on a plane to head home, there is the increasing likelihood that, you'll bring it with you. So that's just part of it. As it currently stands, there's about 40 million people now under varying degrees of lockdown because of the most recent outbreak. It's Omicron and the BA2 subvariant, which is 30% more transmissible and accounts for the bulk of the new infections. So far, 28 of the country's 31 provinces have reported new infections. So they're trying to lock everything down as quickly as they can.
So, well, I said a couple. It's got to be at least a couple of months ago, and it's starting to look like. And I hope they've been planning on it because I'm beginning to believe what I said a few months ago, and that is that, I don't think that. I believe in masking. I believe in being vaccinated. I got boosted. So I want to make sure that I preface what I'm going to say now with that. But I just don't have faith in the fact that we're going to fight this thing to the point where our hospitals are not going to be overrun. I said this a couple of months ago, Aaron, and I think it's time to start considering that there's a commitment that needs to be made by the federal and provincial government that they've been talking about, which is helping our healthcare systems to deal with the reality of COVID. And now it's also about dealing with the reality of COVID-itis, people's frustration with COVID. Now, we can be frustrated. We can throw away our masks. We can stop putting pressure on people getting vaccinated. But more people are going to end up in the hospital. So if you're going to do the first two things, then I truly believe there has to be an expansion of the healthcare system to accommodate the ongoing problem that is and will be COVID-19.
No, again, I'm at a loss as to explain how we're going to get ourselves around this, because I do agree with you, Frank. The government shouldn't be mandating this sort of thing, and I understand the frustration, and I know your desire to get rid of, to get away from this. Finally, trust me, I'm almost there myself. I really do understand,
but responsibly.
That's the problem. You can't ask people to actually be responsible. That's
exactly,
issue, right?
Which is why they have to. What's a good comparison? It doesn't matter. The whole thing is that if we want to carry on normal lives, right, and if we want to be able to be in an accident or have cancer or need an operation and want our hospitals to accommodate those needs as well, then there has to be a control mechanism when it comes to COVID. You can't shut down half the hospital because they got to take care of COVID and cancel operations like cancer operations, where I have a family member who's been waiting for almost a year, 6 months to a year, to have an operation to help with his cancer. Couldn't have it, Aaron, because the hospital was too busy dealing with COVID. Now, I don't like that. The hospital is made to help all kinds of people with all kinds of issues. When it becomes a one-trick pony, Aaron, there's something wrong. It can't be a one-trick pony. The federal government's going to have, the provincial and federal governments have to make a decision. They want to open up, which we all do. You said, I want to open up. Absolutely. I know you're not as much in a hurry to open up as I am. I get that. And I'm not against you for that. I agree with your feelings, as I believe in mine. So we have to accommodate, we have to accommodate. If we're going to play a lot of defense, I want a good goaltender. Right?
Yeah. No, I agree with you.
To use a sport that I was desperate for a sports analogy. So if you're going to not play defense, you're going to want a better goaltender. So we're decided we're not going to play defense. We're just going to let the other team have at it with our goaltender. And we better have a gall darn good goaltender is all I can say. Or we're not going to win. It's not a game, but we're calling it for this point. We're not going to win the game. So,
yeah.
We've got to have we have to have the appropriate control over COVID, whether it be after people get it, if we're not willing to do something before they get it, then we're going to have to accommodate the extra people that are going to be needed to be taken care of.
Yeah, and that's the toughest thing I find about all of this is getting people to be invested in taking care of themselves and in taking care of their friends and family. You got to want to do it, right? And for a lot of these people who are just like, oh, the restrictions are over. Yay, we won. I can do whatever I want. It's like, no, it's not it. You're not quite getting it.
Folks, I hate to use another sports analogy, but it's only the end of the first half or the second period. It is not the end of the game. And we haven't even got to the point where we don't need overtime. And I see overtime in our future. That's the whole thing. If we could just get our defense going, we're leading 3-1. Why go to 3-3? And that's the analogy again that I'm going to make, is that whether anybody wants to admit it or not, our hospitals are made to take care of different things, not just COVID. And when we stop treating people who need operations, I repeat myself, the healthcare system is not just about COVID. It's about many other things. And if those people can't be taken care of, my family member that had the operation, Aaron, it was an 18-hour operation. didn't know if he'd live because he lost so much blood. But because they had to wait to do the operation, it became riskier and riskier and riskier. And this was a very healthy, physically in great shape person.
Mhm.
So I ask myself and I say, now, how many people are like that? And how many people in a position like him who aren't as healthy as him will lose the fight with cancer because we refuse to stamp out COVID the best we can? It's the problem I have with it. What do you have for final comments, my friend?
You
We got a
know,
couple minutes.
we're
You can pick
getting
a
right
topic if
down.
you like.
I was going to say we're getting right down to the short strokes on this. You know, the vaccine passports, we've already done away with that. We're coming up very shortly on the end of the mask mandates, both in school and in the general public. I won't shame you for not wearing a mask.
Don't
That's
shame me for
entirely
wearing one.
on. I was going to say that's entirely on you if you don't want to wear a mask, but at the same time, you can't get on me for continuing to wear one. Also, my masks are stylish; they look really good.
Mine
I'm
says
pretty
Grey
sure.
Cup on it.
Yeah, but hey, you know, I'm pretty sure you don't want to smell what's on my breath after the lunch that I had either. So in a way, I'm doing you a favor by wearing a mask as well.
And that's
So
sacrifice because you're doing it to yourself.
yeah, I mean, you know, do me the common courtesy of not being a total jerk bag about it. Okay, it is what it is. You're gonna do what you're gonna do once these restrictions are lifted. Respect my choices when it comes to that sort of thing. As long as we look after each other and try to do the right thing, you know, it's not a big deal to get the jab. I've had 3. If I have to get 4, that's
They're
fine.
telling us there's a fourth one coming, Aaron. So I
Hey,
mean, I
if
can see the insanity of it, when people talk about it,
Hey, you know, I had 57 needles by the time I was 15 years old. I get one on a yearly basis, if not 2. You know, it's you get 3 or 4 before you travel every time if you've ever been out of the country.
Anybody who goes out of the
You
country knows exactly what the regimen is.
Yeah, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, and Pfizer's talking about working on getting a vaccine that's good, at least that works. You only need it once a year. So, and then I don't know if it's possible, Aaron, but then if they can be incorporated into the flu vaccine, because the flu vaccine is not one strain. It doesn't eradicate only one strain. It eradicates multi strains, those that are identifiable at that time, because the flu is a virus and it changes, right? Which is what coronavirus does. It changes. So maybe we can end up with a a jab that takes care of all that once a year, or it's 2 different jabs, one for corona, one for the flu. And for those of you that think it makes us sheep or less people, all I know is when I jab myself with a rusty nail, I've been led to believe that I need to get a tetanus shot for a reason. So at some point you have to make a decision, and this is always lost, right, Aaron? Where you got to make the decision of taking a risk, the risk of not getting vaccinated as opposed to getting vaccinated. Unfortunately, the people who aren't vaccinated who end up in the hospital always say, I wish I was vaccinated, but it's too late then.
Yeah, you got to do it while you can. So don't wait until it's too late. Don't do something you'll regret later.
Well, fortunately, it's not that many people who end up in that position, Aaron.
This is very true.
I say fortunately because thank goodness it's not a lot of people, right? So,
yeah.
Well, God bless all of you. Whatever decision you make, mutual respect. You want to wear a mask, please go ahead and wear it. You don't want to wear a mask, you have the right not to. So enjoy that, but don't pick on each other about it. That's all Aaron and I think, are saying.
Yeah. Be good to yourselves and each
Good job. Good job.